The day
when I was
Isabella
a
Thorne
kid,
pushed her college
I feel like you
sweetheart,
heard the
Ethan Vance,
thing, you
into
heard
a
the
top spot at the company, I knew my time was up. She
today
slammed her
is
hand
around
on my desk in
when
front
I
of
was
the
a
entire
kid,
executive
I feel
team.
like you heard the
Julian
thing,
Croft,
you heard
give
the
the vice president position to Ethan.
You're
You're being reassigned to
today
director.
is around
I
when
smiled
I
and
was a
tore my
kid,
shareholder
I feel
agreement to
like you heard the
shreds.
thing,
No
you heard
need.
the term.
I quit. When we were handed the divorce decree, she
Today is
sneered.
around
Without
when I
me,
was a
you're
kid,
nothing.
I feel like
Mr.
you heard
Off,
the thing,
Miss
you
Thorne
heard the
needs you in the main conference room. The voice of my assistant, Chris, was stretched hot over the phone like a string about to
I
snap.
feel like you heard the
I was
thing,
staring at a
you heard
quarterly
the
business
term.
analysis on my monitor, the dense grid of data, the result of 3 straight all-nighters.
When I was a
I tapped my
kid,
fingers on the
I
cool
feel like you
surface of
heard
the
the
mouse
thing,
twice.
you heard the term.
Got it, I said, my voice flat, and saved the document,
Today
pushing
is
open
around
the heavy
when
frosted
I was a
glass door to the
kid,
conference
I
room.
feel like you heard
The low hum
thing,
of
you
conversation
heard the
choked
term.
and died. The long table was lined with the company's core
Today is
executives,
around
and
when I
every
was a
single one of
kid,
them was staring
I
at
feel
me
like
with
you
a look
heard
of
the
morbid
thing,
curiosity
you heard the
before their
term.
eyes darted to the unfamiliar figure seated next to the head of the
Today
table.
is
In
around
the chairman's seat,
when I was a
Isabella
kid,
Thorne was a
I feel
portrait of
like you
corporate
heard the
power in a
thing,
sharp
you
iron
heard the
gray
term.
designer suit. Her long hair pulled back so tightly it
Today
exposed
is
her
around
forehead and a
when I
severe
was a
arch of her
kid,
eyebrows.
I feel like you
She
heard
wasn't
the
looking
thing,
at me.
you heard the
She
term.
was angled slightly, murmuring something to the man beside her.
Today
A
is
man in a
around
casual
when
beige
I was
blazer with a
kid,
gentle,
I feel
disarming
like you heard
smile.
the thing,
A rare
you heard
curve
the
of
term.
softness touched Isabella's lips. I knew that man.
Today is
Or
around
rather,
when I
everyone
was
in the
a
company's
kid,
upper
I
echelon
feel
knew
like you
that
heard the
face.
thing,
Ethan
you heard the
Vance,
term.
Isabella's college sweetheart, the one that got away. The
Today
legend
is
who she
around
never quite
when
got
I
over
was a
even after
kid,
he'd moved
I feel like you
overseas.
heard the thing,
And now
you
here
heard
he
the
was
term.
sitting comfortably in the seat to Isabella's right, the seat that had
Today
always been
is
reserved
around
for the
when
company's
I was a
second in
kid,
command.
I feel like
I
you
didn't
heard
break
the
my
thing,
stride,
you
walking
heard the
directly to
term.
my usual chair at Isabella's left. The sound of the
Today
chair
is
scraping
around
back echoed in the
when I was a
tomb-like silence
kid,
of the room.
I feel like you heard
Everyone's
the
here,
thing,
Isabella
you heard the
said,
term.
finally looking up. Her gaze swept the room before landing
Today
on me,
is around
and that fleeting
when I was a
softness vanished,
kid,
replaced
I
by
feel
the
like you
cold,
heard the
hard
thing,
edge of
you
business.
heard the term.
I have an important personnel change to announce. She
Today
gave no
is
one a
around
moment to prepare.
when I was a kid,
Her manicured finger
I feel like
tapped
you
the
heard
polished
the
surface of the
thing,
table,
you heard the
a
term.
sharp, deliberate sound aimed directly at me.
Today
Julian,
is
she
around
said, her
when
voice
I was a
low, but
kid,
piercing with
I feel like you
indisputable
heard the
authority.
thing, you
As
heard
of
the
next
term.
Monday, you will no longer serve as the executive vice president
Today
of business
is around
operations.
when I was a
The air in the
kid,
room turned to
I feel
ice.
like you heard the
A
thing,
few of the
you heard
VPs
the term.
instinctively held their breath, their eyes darting between Isabella,
Today
Ethan,
is around
and me.
when I was a
Isabella
kid,
lifted her chin
I feel like
slightly,
you heard the
gesturing to the
thing,
man
you heard
beside
the
her.
term.
Her tone was as flat as if she were archiving file.
Today is around
Mr. Ethan Vance
when I
will be
was a
taking over
kid,
your
I
position with
feel like
full
you heard the
oversight of the
thing,
group's core
you heard the
business
term.
sectors. She paused, her eyes locking onto mine,
Today
delivering
is
the
around
final blow like a
when I was
routine
a
directive.
kid, I
You'll
feel
be
like you heard
reassigned
the
to director of the
thing, you
marketing
heard the term.
department, reporting to Vice President Vance. A collective
Today
stifled
is around
gasp went through the
when I
room.
was a kid,
Even though they'd
I
sensed
feel like
something
you
was
heard
coming,
thing,
the raw
you heard the
humiliation of the
term.
demotion was a bomb dropped into still
Today
water. Director of
is
marketing.
around
That
when
was
I
a
was a
two-level
kid,
drop from my
I
current
feel like you
position,
heard the
and I was
thing,
expected to
you heard
report
the
to a
term.
complete outsider, an empty suit who
Today
knew nothing about the company's
is around
operations.
when I
A
was
flood
a
of
kid,
gazes,
I
shock,
feel like you
pity,
heard the
a few
thing,
tinged with
you heard
Shad
the
and
term.
Freude were fixed on me. Ethan chose that moment to
Today
stand,
is
a
around
perfectly
when I
calibrated,
was a
humble
kid,
smile on his
I feel like
face.
you heard the
He gave a
thing,
slight nod
you
to the
heard the term.
room. I appreciate the trust Miss Thorne has placed in me.
Today is
I'm new
around
here, and I look
when I
forward
was
to
a
learning from
kid,
all of you.
I feel like you
His
heard
eyes
the
then
thing,
shifted to
you
me,
heard the
his
term.
smile widening with the magnanimity of a victor. I'll especially be relying on Director
when I was
Croft.
a kid,
I'll need you to
I
show
feel
me
like
the
you
ropes
heard
when
the
it comes to the
thing,
business
you heard
side
the
of
term.
things. I hadn't said a word. I was leaning back in my chair, my expression
when I was a
unreadable,
kid,
a ghost of a
I feel
smile
like you
playing on
heard
my
the
lips,
thing,
as if
you
the
heard
man
the
being
term.
publicly stripped of his power and ground into the dirt wasn't me. I just watched Isabella
when I
watch
was
the
a
face that had
kid,
once in
I feel
countless
like
late
you
nights
heard the
been my
thing,
comfort, now
you
a
heard the
cold
term.
alien mask. My silent stare seemed to unnerve her.
Today is
Her
around
brow furrowed
when I
almost
was a
imperceptibly,
kid,
and her
I
voice
feel
grew
like you heard
colder.
the thing,
Director
you heard the
Croft,
term.
do you have a problem with that? This is a corporate decision.
Today is around
Finally,
when
I
I was a
moved.
kid,
I rose
feel
to
like
my
you
feet
heard the
slowly,
thing,
my
you
movements
heard the term.
deliberate. I didn't look at Ethan. My eyes remained fixed on Isabella, the faint
when I was
smile
a
on my lips
kid,
deepening,
I feel
but it
like
was
you heard
utterly
the
devoid of
thing,
warmth.
you heard the term.
A problem, I repeated softly, the word carrying clearly across the silent room. I reached into the inner pocket of my suit jacket and pulled out a dark blue portfolio. Inside was my original shareholder agreement, the document that signified my status as a founding partner. Under the stunned gaze of everyone present, I gripped the portfolio with both hands, my knuckles turning white from the pressure. Rip. The sharp, decisive sound of tearing paper shattered the stillness. My expression was blank as my hands moved with steady force once, then again, ripping the document that represented my wealth, my position, and years of sacrifice into halves, then into quarters. Snow-white scraps of paper fluttered from my fingers, scattering across the gleaming tabletop like a sudden unseasonable blizzard. The color drained from Isabella's face. She shot to her feet. "Julian, what are you doing?" The smile on Ethan's face froze, his expression a mask of disbelief. I let the last of the pieces fall from my hands. I dusted off my palms, though they were clean, and met Isabella's furious, shocked gaze. The cold smile finally bloomed into a full, chilling grin. "Reassign me." My voice was clear, infused with a sense of finality. "Miss Thorne, there's no need to go to all that trouble." I scanned a room of dumbfounded executives, my eyes finally settling on Isabella's pale face. I spoke each word with the force of a gavel strike. "I quit." Without another glance at anyone, I turned, pushed my chair in, and strode toward the conference room door. The sound of my leather shoes on the plush carpet was a dull, steady rhythm, each step landing like a hammer blow on Isabella's suddenly erratic heartbeat. "Julian, you get back here." Isabella's shriek echoed behind me, laced with a panic she herself didn't recognize. My hand was already on a cold metal door handle. I paused, turning my head slightly, but I didn't look back. "Miss Thorne." My voice came muffled slightly by the door. "The transition email will be in your inbox in 30 minutes. Click. The heavy door closed softly behind me, sealing off the dead silence within and severing the last freight connection between Isabella Thorne and me. The heavy mahogany door of the CEO's office flew open, slamming against the wall with a dull thud. Isabella stormed in like a blizzard, her heels clicking in angry, rapid-fire beat against the expensive marble floor. She marched to the massive executive desk and slammed both palms down on its surface, the impact making the pens in their holder jump. "Julian, what the hell was that?" Her chest heaved, the sharp lines of her makeup unable to contain the fury blazing in her eyes. "Tearing up your stock grants in front of the entire executive team. Just walking out. Do you think this company is a playground you can just leave whenever you want?" I was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window, my back to her. Outside, the steel and glass skyline of the city was a cold gray monolith under a heavy sky. I held a cup of long cold black coffee, no steam rising from its surface. Hearing her tirade, I didn't even move my shoulders. I simply tilted my head back and drained the bitter cold liquid in one swallow. I turned around, my face a blank canvas, my eyes a desolate landscape. I placed the empty cup on the corner of the desk with a soft click. It meant what it sounded like. I said, my voice raw and tired as if scraped with sandpaper. "I quit. I'm done." "You're done." Isabella laughed a harsh, incredulous sound. She rounded the desk, closing the distance between us, searching my face for any sign of regret or petulance. "Julian, are you seriously trying to pull this stunt with me? Do you think this threatens me? That it will make me change my mind? How old are you?" She jabbed a finger toward my face, the tip trembling with rage. "Without me, without Thor Industries, what are you, Julian Croft? You were just a scholarship kid from the wrong side of the tracks who got lucky when the great Isabella Thorne gave him a chance." I finished her sentence calmly, my tone devoid of emotion, as if stating a fact about a stranger. I met her gaze, my own eyes so placid they were terrifying like a frozen lake. "You've been saying that for years." My unnerving calm seemed to prickle her underneath that icy surface. She could sense something had irrevocably shattered. She pushed the strange feeling down, her voice rising to a shrill defensive pitch. "Was I wrong? Without my family, would you have any of this? Would you be in the position you are today? And now, because of a simple reassignment, you throw a tantrum and walk out. Julian, do you have any sense of responsibility? Responsibility?" I repeated the word slowly, a faint, cold smirk, twisting my lips. It was a mockery of both her and myself. "Is my responsibility to stand by and watch you install your long-lost love into the company, then personally hand him to the position I bled for on a silver platter?" I took a step forward, closing the space between us. She was was so close now. She could see the web of broken capillaries in my eyes. Could feel the profound exhaustion and disappointment rolling off me in waves. Isabella, I used her full name, my voice low, but each word a razor's edge. All these years, I have worked myself to the bone for this company. The all-nighters, the client dinners that ended with me sick from too much scotch, the deals that fell through only for me to claw them back. In your eyes, was any of that worth more than him simply deciding to come back? She flinched, taking an involuntary step back, her eyes flickering. You're being ridiculous. This was a standard corporate restructuring. Ethan is qualified. He has a global perspective. He's qualified. I cut her off. The cold smile now tinged with genuine bitter amusement. Qualified for what? Writing bad poetry in a coffee shop or living off your family's name while he found himself in Europe? Isabella, wake up. Putting him in that position isn't helping him. It's throwing him to the wolves. And you're pushing the entire company off a cliff right along with him. Enough. She shrieked like a cornered animal, her face flushed with a mixture of shame and the anger of being exposed. This is my company. I'll hire whoever I want. It's not your place to question me. Julian, I'm telling you, your actions today have severely damaged this company's interests and reputation. You will go back right now and apologize to the entire executive team, and you will retract your resignation. Apologize? I looked at her and a last flicker of warmth in my eyes died, leaving behind a chilling void. I shook my head slowly, a gesture of absolute finality. Isabella, we should have ended this a long time ago. My voice dropped, heavy with the weight of years of exhaustion. And I'm not just talking about work. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A profound sense of dread seized her. What? What are you trying to say? I didn't look at her. I walked back behind the desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. It didn't contain files. Inside lay a single small navy blue velvet box. I took it out and opened it. Two simple platinum wedding bands rested inside, reflecting the cold light of the overhead fixtures. One was slightly wider, the other thinner. We had bought them when we got married. I had never taken mine off. She, it seemed, only wore hers to weddings and the occasional charity gala where we needed to present a united front. I picked up the man's ring, my thumb stroking the cool metal surface for a moment. Then, without hesitation, I slid it off my finger and placed it back in the box. The motion was clean, devoid of sentiment. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I said, closing the box. I looked up, my gaze locking onto Isabella's suddenly ashen face. Bring your driver's license and any other required documents. I paused, then spoke the final two words. The courthouse. Chapter 3. The county courthouse lobby smelled of antiseptic and old paper mixed with the faint oppressive aura of countless bitter endings. The air was thick and hard to breathe. I sat on a cold blue plastic chair, my back ramrod straight, an unmoving sculpture. I had arrived early. The hall was mostly empty, save for a few other silent couples scattered in the corners, staring at the floor, a vast, invisible chasm separating them. Click, clack, click, clack. The familiar sound of heels on linoleum approached, the rhythm deliberately measured. Isabella had arrived. She wore impeccably tailored black suit, her makeup flawless, her red lips pressed into a stubborn line. Her chin was lifted, projecting the image of a proud peacock ready for battle. She walked past me and sat down, leaving one empty chair between us, a buffer zone that felt as wide as an ocean. Neither of us looked at the other. Neither of us spoke. The silence was a physical weight pressing down on us. Number 37, Isabella Thorne, Julian Croft. A clerk's monotone voice called out from a window. We both stood and walked one after the other to the small sterile counter that marked the end. A middle-aged woman with a weary scene and all expression sat behind the glass. Paperwork, she said without looking up, her hand outstretched. 2 sets of documents, 2 driver's licenses were pushed under the petition. The clerk processed the information with mechanical efficiency, her fingers clattering on the keyboard. Do you have a divorce agreement? She asked. Here. I pulled 2 copies from my briefcase and handed them over. The terms were simple. I was walking away with almost nothing. Just my personal savings and the old car I've been driving for years. The shares in Thorne Industries, the real estate, the other assets. I wanted none of it. Isabella glanced at the agreement, her lips parting for a moment as she saw the property division clause where I'd relinquished everything. But she said nothing, pressing her lips tightly together again. She took the pen and signed her name with sharp, angry strokes. I signed my name as well. My handwriting was steady without a tremor. The clerk took the signed papers, reviewed them one last time, then produced two small dark red certificate folders. She affixed our photos and picked up the heavy official seal chunk. The seal came down with a solid definitive sound embossing the crimson paper, a sound that seemed to echo in the hollows of our broken marriage. Chuck a second time. Two fresh new divorce decrees were pushed through the slot. You're all set, the clerk said, her voice unchanged. I reached out and took my copy. The cover felt cold, foreign. I didn't even open it. I simply slid it into the inner pocket of my suit jacket as if it were a meaningless expense report. Isabella picked hers up. She stared at the golden boss words decree of divorce for a few seconds, her knuckles white. Then she snapped her head up, her eyes finding me as I was turning to leave. Julian, she called out, her voice sharp in the cavernous hall. I stopped but didn't turn around. She strode in front of me, blocking my path. She held a new decree up, waving it in my face, a cruel, cold smirk twisting her lips. Do you see this? Her voice was laced with venom, each word a shard of ice. Without me, without Thor Industries, you Julian Croft are nothing. She stared into my eyes, searching desperately for a flicker of pain, regret, or anger. She needed to see me break, to see me lose my composure, to see me admit that she had one. But I just looked at her calmly, my expression as deep and still as a well, without a single ripple. There was no anger, no sorrow, not even hatred. There was only a profound, soul-crushing indifference. I sidestepped her as if she were nothing more than a column of air. Is that so? I asked quietly, my voice as light as the wind, but carrying an immense weight. I didn't pause. I didn't look back. I just kept walking towards the glass doors of the courthouse. Doors that symbolized both an end and a liberation. Sunlight streamed in bright and blinding. My silhouette, stark and solitary, walked steadily into the light and disappeared, never once looking back. Isabella was left standing there, her hand frozen midair, the ugly smirk congealing on her face like a cheap mask. She watched the unhesitating figure vanish into the sunlight, and a sudden, overwhelming wave of ice-cold panic washed over her, so intense it nearly buckled her knees. The little red folder in her hand suddenly felt like it was burning her skin. Chapter 4. Thor Industries' top floor CEO's office. Beyond the massive windows, the city was coming alive with light, a glittering tapestry of neon that sketched out a prosperous skyline. But the atmosphere inside the office was a stark, suffocating contrast. Isabella threw a financial report onto the expansive mahogany desk with a violent slap. Pages scattered, revealing a sea of glaring red numbers indicating massive losses. What in God's name is this quarterly report? She shot up from her chair, her hands braced on the desk as she leaned forward like a cornered lioness, her sharp gaze sweeping over the department head standing before her. Can someone explain to me why profits in our core business sector have fallen off a cliff by 30%? Why? The director of marketing, a balding, middle-aged man, was sweating profusely. He wiped his brow, his voice trembling. Miss Thorne, it's mainly a few of our key accounts. The ones that Jude had Mr. Croft personally managed. He had deep relationships with them since he left. And Mr. Vance took over. We tried to reach out, but they've been cold. Some have. Some have terminated their renewal negotiations altogether. Client relations. Isabella scoffed as if it were the most ridiculous excuse she'd ever heard. She slammed her fist on the desk again. You're telling me our client relations depend on one man who doesn't even work here anymore. What is the marketing department for? And where is Vice President Vance? Isn't he in charge of the core business? What is he doing? Her sharp glare landed on Ethan Vance, who stood to the side, his face pale. Ethan flinched at being called out. He quickly composed himself, forcing his usual gentle smile. Isabella, don't worry. Market fluctuations are normal. I've personally visited those clients. It might just take some time to build a new rapport. Rest assured, I'm already developing a new marketing strategy. We'll stabilize the situation soon. Soon? How soon? Isabella cut him off without a shred of courtesy. Her eyes like daggers. Ethan, I put you in this position to get results. Not to hear the word soon. I want outcomes. I want real performance, not empty promises. She pointed a trembling finger at the damning report on her desk. Look at these numbers.
When I was a kid,
just look at them.
I feel like
Is this the best you could do after 3 months? Is this your global perspective and qualification? The smile finally slid off Ethan's face, leaving a stiff, humiliated expression. Isabella, let me explain. The situation is more complex than we thought.
When I was a kid,
complex?
I feel like you heard
Isabella's laugh was cold and sharp. Or maybe some people aren't qualified and make simple things complex. She ignored him, her gaze sweeping over the others. I don't care how you do it. By next month, I want to see these numbers turning around. If not, all of you, including you, Vice President Vance, can pack your bags and get out. Meeting adjourned. The executives scurried out of the room as if they'd been granted a pardon. Their heads down, their footsteps quick, terrified of being incinerated by her rage. Soon, only Isabella and his stone-faced Ethan remained. Isabella, you were a little. Ethan began trying to soften the mood. Get out, she said, her back to him, her voice a cold, weary whisper. I want to be alone. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. He gave her rigid back a complicated look and quietly let himself out. The door clicked shut. The office was plunged into a dead silence. Isabella collapsed into her large leather chair as if all her bones had dissolved. She covered her face with her hands, the coolness of her fingers a stark contrast to her burning skin. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably. The last 3 months had been a waking nightmare. The indifferent, almost placid look in Julian's eyes as he left had become a thorn lodged deep in her heart. She had expected him to come crawling back to regret his decision to apologize as he had after so many of their arguments. She had even rehearsed how she would magnanimously forgive him and allow him to return. But he never came. He vanished completely like a drop of water evaporating in a thin air, leaving behind nothing but a rudderless company, beginning to list dangerously. And Ethan, Isabella, closed her eyes in agony. She had once thought of him as the poetic, brilliant soul who had illuminated her youth. But when he was placed in a position that required real-world grit and strategy, all she saw was indecisiveness, arrogance, and a complete inability to handle complex situations. He was all theory and no substance. He had no idea how to handle the company's shrewd, cutthroat clients. He didn't understand the intricate internal politics. He was utterly lost in the rapidly changing market. His so-called global perspective was laughably fragile in the face of brutal reality. And Julian, the man she had believed was nothing without her family. He had been the anchor holding the entire ship steady. When he was there, no one noticed his importance. She had even found him tiresome. But now that he was gone, the ship was rocking violently, exposing countless hidden cracks and threatening to capsize. Isabella's eyes flew open. She grabbed her phone, her knuckles white. She scrolled to a number in her blocked list, her finger hovering over the screen, trembling violently. A powerful toxic wave of regret, resentment, and a terrifying emotion she refused to name crashed over her, threatening to drown her. Chapter 5. Crash. Another binder hit the conference table, its contents spilling across the polished wood. Useless. All of you are useless. Isabella's roar filled the room. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked like a trapped animal, pointing a trembling finger at the stock chart on the projector screen. The line was a nosedive, a plummeting red streak of disaster. 3 days. In just 3 days, our market cap has evaporated by 40%. Is this what you call stabilizing the situation? The room was deathly quiet. Every executive stared at the table, wishing the floor would swallow them whole. Ethan Vance, seated to her right, was ashen. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his lips trembled, but no words came out. The high-stakes Southbridge Tech acquisition he had personally spearheaded was a catastrophic failure. Blinded by arrogance, he had underestimated his opponents, ignored repeated warnings from the risk management and legal teams, and stubbornly refused to compromise on key terms TE the last minute. The other party pulled the rug out from under him, using a loophole in the contract to countersue while simultaneously leaking a story to the press that Thorne Industries had engaged in predatory tactics. The scandal spread like a virus. The stock price collapsed. Investors panicked. The bank started calling in their loans. The entire company was on the brink of implosion. Vice President Vance Isabella rounded on him, her voice shrill with rage and disappointment. Wasn't this the deal you personally guaranteed? Was the sure thing? Is this your global perspective? Do you have any idea what you've done? You've dragged this entire company to hell with you. Isabella, I didn't know they would be so deceitful. Ethan stammered, his voice weak. They said a trap. A trap. Isabella laughed, a horrifying, humorless sound. She rose to her feet, looming over him with undisguised contempt. Business is war. Haven't you ever heard that all's fair? Or were you too busy writing poetry to learn how the real world works? They played you for a fool, and now the rest of us have to pay the price. Ethan was so thoroughly humiliated he looked as if he might faint. Get out. Isabella pointed to the door. Her voice a ragged, exhausted hiss. All of you get out now. The executives fled. Ethan stumbled to his feet and staggered out of the room, a picture of utter defeat. Isabella was left alone. She collapsed back in her chair as if her bones had turned to dust. The piercing green line on the projector screen, still ticking downward, felt like a venomous snake coiling around her heart, squeezing tighter and tighter. It's over. The words hammered in her mind. The banks would show no mercy. The shareholders would demand her head. Their competitors would feast on the carcass. The empire her father had built was going to crumble to dust in her hands. Despair, cold and absolute, finally drowned her. She covered her face in hot tears. The tears she had held back for months finally broke through the dam of her pride, scalding her palms. What could she do? What was left to do? One name, a name she had tried desperately to forget, a name that now surfaced with blinding clarity in her moment of ultimate desperation, slammed into her consciousness. Julian, only him. Only he had pulled the company back from the brink before. Only he understood the labyrinth of its politics and clients. Only the thought, once formed, grew like a wildfire, incinerating her pride. Like a drowning woman grasping for a piece of driftwood, she shot to her feet, forgetting to even wipe the tears from her face. She snatched her car keys from the table and ran. Sometime during the meeting, a torrential downpour had started. Rain hammered against the windshield of her sports car. The wipers on their highest setting barely able to keep up. She floored the accelerator, the car hydroplaning on the slick asphalt. Her mind was a maelstrom of panic with only one clear, desperate thought. Find Julian. Beg him. Beg him to come back. She didn't know where he lived. After the divorce, he had simply vanished. Working on a vague memory and a sliver of hope, she drove to the upscale neighborhood where they had once lived, the place he had moved out of. She remembered him mentioning he had rented a small apartment nearby. Drenched and shivering, her expensive suit plastered to her skin, she abandoned her car and ran into the building, her heels sinking into the soaked carpet. She found the apartment number. She vaguely remembered. Bang! 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 She pounded on the dark, heavy door with all her strength, the cold metal stinging her fists. Julian opened the door. Julian, I know you're in there. Open up. Her voice was a ragged, sobbing mess, swallowed by the roar of the storm outside. Silence from within. Julian, please open the door. The company is in trouble, Ethan. He screwed up the Southbridge deal. The stock has crashed. The banks are calling in our loans. The company is going to die, she cried, her words tumbling out in a desperate, incoherent torrent. She pressed her forehead against the cold door, her body shaking from cold and fear. You're the only one who can save it, Julian. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please help me. Help, Thorne. Her voice trailed off into a pathetic, broken plea. A sound of utter degradation she never thought she would make. Click. The deadbolt turned. Isabella's heart leaped. He's opening it. He still cares. The door opened a crack. The main lights were off inside, but a dim yellow lamp in the entryway cast a tall, imposing shadow. Julian stood there in a simple gray sweatsuit, his face unreadable, his eyes as cold and deep as a frozen lake, watching her. That look was colder than the rain, soaking her to the bone. Isabella lunged forward, trying to squeeze through the opening. Julian, I miss Thorne. Julian's voice, low and flat, cut through her hopes like a shard of glass. He stood firm, his hand braced on the doorframe, making it clear she was not welcome inside. His gaze traveled slowly, clinically, from her drenched hair over her pale, terrified face, and finally settled on her left hand, which was gripping the doorframe so tightly her knuckles were white. On her ring finger, a simple platinum band reflected the dim mocking light. Julian's eyes lingered on that ring for 2 long seconds. Then he looked back at her face, a canvas of tears, rain, and desperation. A slow, cold smile spread across his lips, a smile devoid of warmth, filled only with infinite mockery. Now he said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "You are the one who is nothing." As the words landed, he shoved the door. Slam! The heavy door slammed shut with a deafening final boom a fraction of an inch from her face. Its force a physical blow. It extinguished the sliver of yellow light from within and with it the last of her hope. Her world was reduced to the oppressive darkness of the hallway and the relentless roaring sound of the rain. Chapter 6. The heavy doors sealed off the world, muffling the desperate cries and the sound of the storm. Inside, Julian leaned against the cool metal, the dim light of the entryway, casting his face in shadow. The ghost of her pleased, the sight of that ring. It was a delayed poison, 1,000 tiny needles of a pain he thought he had buried. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were clear and still. He walked into the living room. The city lights outside blurred by the rain-streaked windows. His phone vibrated. The screen read, his best friend from college, the only one who knew what he'd been doing since he left Thorn Industries. Yeah, Julian's voice was hoarse. "Jules, you're not going to believe this." Ryan's voice was electric with excitement. "Coleman is in. So are Peterson and Davis. They're all ready to jump ship and come with you. And the seed money, it's in the bank. We're just waiting for you to give the word." Julian's grip on the phone tightened. Coleman, Peterson, Davis. They were the top engineers at Thorn, the true brains of the operation, all of whom had been sidelined and demoralized by Ethan Vance's incompetent leadership. For the past 3 months, Julian hadn't vanished. He had been working in the shadows, leveraging every bit of goodwill and every contact he had ever made, weaving a new web. "Good," he said, the single word carrying the weight of a final, irrevocable decision. "Tell them the first all-hands meeting for Voyager Innovations is tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Voyager Innovations." Ryan paused. Then his voice grew even more excited. "I love it. We're setting sail, man. Let's show those blindfolds of Thorn what they threw away." Julian ended the call and walked to his desk. In a warm glow of the lamp, several thick business plans and market analyses lay open, covered in his dense handwritten notes, the fruits of 3 months of sleepless nights. He picked up a pen and drew a firm, heavy line under the words Voyager Innovations. Outside, the storm raged, washing the city clean. Inside, in the heart of the tempest, a new journey was about to begin. Chapter 7. 3 months later, the annual Innovate Con, the tech industry's premier event, was in full swing at the city's largest convention center. It was a gathering of giants and rising stars, a battlefield for influence and capital. Isabella Thorne sat near the front looking poised in a perfectly tailored navy suit, but it was a fragile facade. The Southbridge deal had left the company crippled. The stock had stabilized, but the damage was done. The banks were circling like vultures, and employee morale was at an all-time low. Ethan Vance had been quietly demoted to an irrelevant position and was now sitting several rows behind her, a ghost at the feast. She was here on a desperate mission to find new investors, a lifeline for her sinking company. But the industry titans who had once courted her now offered only polite, distant greetings. No one was interested in catching the falling knife that was Thorn Industries. And now, please welcome the founder and CEO of the most exciting startup at this year's summit, Voyager Innovations, Mr. Julian Croft, for his keynote address. The core drivers of the new connected age. The MC's voice boomed through the auditorium. A wave of thunderous applause erupted, far more enthusiastic than for any of the established CEOs who had spoken earlier. Isabella froze as if struck by lightning. She looked up at the stage in disbelief. Bathed in the spotlight, a familiar yet transformed figure walked confidently to the center of the stage. Julian, he wore a tailored dark gray suit, his posture radiating a quiet power. The exhaustion that had clung to him at Thorn was gone, replaced by a sharp, focused energy. His gaze swept calmly over the audience. The look of a man in complete control. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady and clear, commanding the attention of the entire room. Isabella's heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. She stared at the man on stage, the man she had cast aside, the man she had scornfully declared would be nothing without her. And here he was, not as a failure, but as the founder of a white-hot tech company that had venture capitalists drooling. His speech was brilliant. No empty buzzwords, just sharp analysis, clear logic, and a visionary roadmap for the future. He detailed the revolutionary technology his team, her former top engineers, had developed. He articulated a business model so disruptive and compelling that the titans in the front rows were nodding in admiration, their faces alight with interest. Isabella felt sick. Every word he spoke was a slap in the face. Every round of applause was a testament to her catastrophic misjudgment. The man radiating brilliance on stage was the same man whose worth she had measured and found wanting. The speech ended with a standing ovation. As Julian walked off stage, he was immediately swarmed by investors, journalists, and competitors, all thrusting business cards at him, desperate for a moment of his time. Isabella watched the scene, her nails digging into her palms. Taking a deep breath, she stood and pushed her way through the crowd toward him. "Julian," she called out, her voice trembling slightly as she reached the edge of the circle. "Can we talk?" The crowd quieted for a moment, all eyes turning to her. Julian was shaking hands with a legendary venture capitalist. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes landing on her. His expression was placid, the look one gives a complete stranger. He didn't say a word to her. He simply gave a polite nod to the investor he was speaking with and seamlessly resumed their conversation, turning his back on her as he did. He treated her as if she were nothing more than a gust of wind. Isabella was left standing there frozen, the blood draining from her face. The surrounding stares, a mixture of pity, amusement, and curiosity, felt like 1,000 tiny needles. As Julian and his new admirers moved past her, he never gave her a second glance. "Excuse me, Miss Thorne," a rival co-said with a smirk as he squeezed past. "You're in the way." Isabella swayed on her feet as she watched Julian's back disappear into the throng. The cold, hard reality finally crashed down on her with its full crushing weight. The Julian who had once been hers was gone forever, so far out of reach, she couldn't touch him even if she stood on her toes. Chapter 8. The CEO's office at Thorne Industries was a tomb. The desk was buried under a mountain of default notices, legal threats, and financial reports that bled red ink. The air itself felt thick with a stench of decay. Isabella sat slumped in a chair, a hollowed-out version of her former self. Dark circles under her eyes were visible even beneath a thick layer of concealer. The Queen had been deposed. "Miss Thorne, the bank. This is their final notice." The CFO's voice cracked. He gently placed a document with a stark red seal on her desk. "If we can't make the first $300 million payment by Monday, they're filing to freeze all corporate accounts and begin asset seizure." Isabella stared at the red seal. It looked like blood. She moved her chapped lips, but no sound came out. Every door was closed. Her father's old contacts were spent. Ethan, the man for whom she had burned down her world, was a ghost, reportedly drinking himself into oblivion. This was the end of the line. Slowly, she pulled open the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside was the small navy blue velvet box. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The 2 platinum bands lay inside, her own, and the one Julian had placed back in his box on the day he asked for a divorce. She picked up his ring. The cold metal sent a shiver through her. She traced the inscription inside. Their initials and a date she had once thought trivial, a date that now felt sacred. A wild, desperate, last-ditch idea began to form in the ruins of her mind. Late that night, the buzzer of Julian's penthouse apartment rang. He had just finished a video conference and was rubbing the fatigue from his eyes. He glanced at the security monitor and saw Isabella's face pale and gaunt. Rain plastered her hair to her skull. She looked like a wraith. Julian's jaw tightened. He had no desire to see her on the screen. She looked up at the camera, her voice coming through the speaker, raw and desperate. "Julian, please let me in just for 5 minutes. I have something for you." He hesitated for a moment, then buzzed her in. He wanted to see what final pathetic card she had left to play. When he opened the door, he blocked the entrance with his body. He wore dark loungewear and radiated an aura of untouchable coldness. "What do you want, Isabella?" She stood in the hallway, dripping water onto the carpet. She looked up at him at the cool indifference in his eyes, and her heart clenched with a pain so sharp it stole her breath. She held out her trembling hand, palm up. In the dim light of the hallway, a single platinum man's ring lay in her palm, gleaming faintly. Her voice was a broken whisper. "Your ring. I kept it. I was wrong, Julian. God, I was so wrong." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain. She took a tiny step forward, trying to press the ring into his hand. Please, for the sake of what we once had, help Thorn Industries one last time. Just once. If you come back, I'll give you anything. The company, it can all be yours. We can get married again. Please. She had abandoned her last shred of pride, reveling in the dirt for a scrap of his mercy. Julian's gaze dropped from her tear-streaked face to the ring in her hand. The world seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Julian moved. He reached out, but not for the ring. His fingers brushed against her cold, trembling wrist, and then with a slow, deliberate pressure, he pushed her hand away. The gesture was gentle, yet it was the most definitive rejection she had ever known. Isabella, he said, his voice low and devoid of all emotion. Belated affection is cheaper than dirt. He leaned in, his cool breath ghosting against her ear, his voice a chilling whisper that would haunt her forever. This ring, he paused, his gaze flicking from a platinum band to her desperate face. And you, he delivered the final blow with chilling precision. I find you both filthy. He straightened up, took a step back, and without another look at her, he acted. Slam. The heavy door slammed shut with a deafening finality. Its verdict absolute. The platinum ring she had offered as her last hope slipped from her numb fingers. It clattered on the cold, hard floor and rolled into a dark corner, its faint light extinguished. Left alone in the hallway, the sound of a woman's soul tearing, utterly broken sobs finally filled the empty space. A hopeless, desolate sound against the unceasing rhythm of the rain. Chapter 9. The first snow of winter fell, blanketing the city in a quiet shroud, burying the last remnants of Thorn Industries. Stark white notices from the court were plastered across the glass doors of the company's headquarters, a monument to a fallen empire. The building that was once a bustling hub of ambition now stood silent and empty. Bankruptcy, liquidation, asset auction. The headlines were merciless. The accompanying photos showed the sealed doors and Isabella's face pale and numb as she was swarmed by reporters. On the other side of the city, in a thriving new tech corridor, the Voyager Innovations logo was a beacon of success atop a gleaming new office tower. Inside his spacious corner office, Julian Croft stood watching the snowfall. On his desk, a stack of documents awaited his signature. On top was the agreement finalizing the acquisition of Thorn Industries' core, RD assets, and patents. Jules, the board is ready for you, Ryan said, poking his head in, his face beaming with success. On my way, Julian replied. He turned from the window, his expression calm and focused, his eyes fixed on the future. As he passed the front desk, the young receptionist stopped him. Mr. Croft, a package just arrived for you. It requires a personal signature. Leave it in my office, he said without breaking his stride. Sir, it's a small box. Zinda, as she hesitated. Isabella Thorn. Julian's step faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he continued on as if he hadn't heard, pushing open the glass doors to the main boardroom where his team, his future, was waiting. When the meeting concluded, Julian returned to his office. The small plain cardboard box sat on the corner of his desk. He picked it up. It was light. He tore it open. There was no note, no letter. Inside, nestled in a bit of tissue paper, was a single thin platinum wedding band. Her ring. The inscription on the inside glinted under the bright office lights, a final pathetic echo of a world that no longer existed. Julian looked at it for less than a second. Then he turned and dropped the box, and the ring inside it into the industrial-grade office shredder by his desk. Poor. The machine hummed to life. The platinum band was mangled, twisted, and then obliterated, disappearing into a rain of metallic dust and shredded cardboard, indistinguishable from the day's other refuse. Julian turned back to the window. The snow had stopped. A sliver of golden sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the clean white landscape of the city and the bright, limitless road ahead. A faint, unreadable expression crossed his face as he looked into the light. The quiet, resolute look of a man who had cut away the past and was looking only forward. The age of Julian Croft had just begun. The dream of Isabella Thorn, along with her ring, had already been reduced to dust.